My dad, he's an entrepreneur, he's a lawyer, and he's just like a very cool customer. And, nothing seems to rattle him. He's in his 80s and he still has incredible energy and patience and the ability to get down into the details on anything. Probably the best advice is just about being balanced and just trying to maintain balance.
Dan Rosenberg is the guy who makes B2B marketing sound almost fun. Almost. As the mastermind behind Octane 11, he's turning boring data into actual results, not just pretty charts to impress the C-suite. From media math wizardry to making Virgin Mobile cool, Dan's seen it all. Today, he's here to convince us that ad tech isn't just smoke and mirrors. Let's see if he can sell us on that.
Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, isn't just the guy you call when your phone rings too much. He's the guy you must call. Need to navigate the legal minefield of robocalls, texts, and telemarketing nightmares? Troutman doesn't just give you advice. He hands you a roadmap, a compass, and a do not press this button sign. Practical? Yes. Actionable? Absolutely. And if you're not calling him first, let's be honest, you're probably making a mistake.
To the ADOTAT Show, I'm Pesach Lattin, your trusty and slightly irreverent tour guide through media, marketing, ad tech. Today's guest is no other than Dan Rosenberg of Octane 11, the guy who's making B2B marketing analytics less about boring spreadsheets and more about actual results. From media math to Virgin Mobile, Dan's been behind some of the sharpest moves in the industry. Let's see if he can sell us on the idea that ad tech isn't just smoke and mirrors. First of all, let's start simple. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
So, do you think AI is about to make marketing smarter? Or are we just waiting for it to stop calling us a valued customer in emails?
I think AI is incredible. I mean, it's been a long time in the coming to get to a place where it's like actually you can put it into practice for marketing. And I'm particularly focused on B2B marketing, but the applications are incredible. We're already starting to see it. There's a huge amount of like productivity savings, and it's just the tip of the iceberg so far. So I'm pumped.
So what do you think the biggest thing that's holding AI is? Is it data silos, lack of imagination, or the fact that most marketers think API is a typo?
I mean, I think there's really three things that's holding us back. I mean, number one, there's obviously like a little bit of apprehension about like, where is my data going? So there's definitely concerns about that. Like, is it going out into the world? Is it becoming part of a large language model? So we got to get over that. There are companies that are set up task force to look into this. Sometimes it's a real kind of a telltale sign, like is the AI task force set up by the legal team, or is it set up by like a sales or marketing team? Like that may be an indication of how fast you're going to move, but that's definitely like a first hurdle you got to get over. The second one is just getting the data to make it useful all into one place where the AI can act on it. I mean, you can use AI where you can kind of type and you're just into like a open AI where you're basically getting data from the web. But like if you really want to make it useful and use your own corporate data, like you got to get all your data into one place that the AI can act on. That's actually something that Octane 11 focuses on. So that one's kind of near and dear to my heart. The third one is this, like when you're getting insights or any kind of output from the AI, like what do you do with it? How do you put it into action and really connect it into the tools that you're using today? So like those are, in my mind, like the three things that are like the blockers to really getting AI in use in marketing and certainly in B2B marketing. And I think we're getting, closer on all three fronts.
So do you have any example of AI going hilariously wrong?
Well, I mean, I think we're definitely seeing some abuses. I mean, when you're getting emails or you're seeing comments on LinkedIn that are like a little bit awkward, like you're definitely seeing that. And like,
Right.
you definitely don't like to see that. But I mean, I think where you're seeing it probably most like egregious right now is in like creative images. Like it just hasn't quite nailed it. Like if you're seeing like, like 7 fingers on, that person in the creative, or I knew the funny one I was reading about at Business Insider earlier this year. Like, I think it was like Instacart was using AI to create images, and they had like a really funny, like a salad that had like vegetables you'd never seen before, created by AI. So a little bit scary, but the same thing for written content. Like you need the human eye on all this just to make sure like it's as expected.
You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. Walking on beams of light, 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 light. You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. I can't help myself, no, no. Blue skies, no dark clouds, and nothing in my way.
It still looks natural.
So how do you think the C-suite can use AI without setting money on fire or creating more problems than they solve?
Yeah, I think it's like any tool. Like you just have to test and learn. Like we always have this idea for any tools that we use or marketing tactics or data sets. Like you always have like your incumbents and your challengers. So there's always some portion of whatever you're doing that's set aside for experimentation. So if you're trying adoption that way, like you're not going to get burned. Like you're going to be able to try things out and see what works and then lean into the things that work.
What do you think works?
We've seen a ton already on content generation. So obviously the ability to put in a bit of information, upload a PowerPoint and get written content out is incredible. We're just starting to see that in creative. One that I'm really excited about is actually one that I tried out for like, being a podcast host yourself. You could create a podcast. There's Notebook LM. It's a Google tool where you can load in content and it actually creates a podcast, 2 or more speakers speaking with each other. And it is mind blowing how good it is. Go check out my LinkedIn post on this. I actually loaded in, I haven't yet revealed that was the source of the content as of, today, but loaded in a sales presentation and it created a discussion between 2 people. And it was mind blowing how good it was. Their
and it
banter,
created the voices also?
The voices, the content, analogies. It was like completely blew my mind. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So that one's a great one. I don't think we're yet seeing it just for the reasons I mentioned around leveraging your data for insights. Like we're just not quite there yet because the data is not really in place. And I think because there just hasn't been enough confidence or enough of like getting data inside the enterprise prepared for the AI. But that is coming soon. And companies like Octane 11 are preparing that enterprise data to make that useful.
So how far is too far with personalization? Are we getting close to the moment where smart toasters might suggest I switch to low-carb bread?
Personalization is great, but you're right. It's got to be, up to a point. I'll give you an example. Like in B2B marketing, there was a time, and I think you're still seeing it, where you've got some ads that they may know what company you work at, like in the data in the background, but for the ad creative to say like, "Hey Dan from Dell, check out this product," it's like just having your name in the creative, I think, is just a step too far. By all means, like use the data you have to make the content relevant. Like show me products that I care about or that are going to be helpful to me, but putting my name in there, putting my company in there, I think that's just a bridge too far.
So what do you think the biggest ethical mess waiting to happen is, and who's going to clean it up?
I mean, I think you're always going to have some ethical questions around like what data can be brought to bear. Can we bring in, there are always concerns about like personal data, medical data and all that. And so I think the regulation is good on that and getting better. I think maybe the place where, we want to be careful of, I think we saw that like in the last election cycle here in the US, but I think we're seeing it around the world where just how fractious the political landscape has become is just like crowding out any other points of view. And, even like just gaslighting with information that may not be accurate. And so there's a real, like you need to be, careful about that. And when it comes down into marketing, like, there are regulations around like, advertising and false claims in advertising. And that may get harder to regulate with like the fragmentation of screens and the high volume of messaging that we're seeing. But like, we're going to need some controls or, some accountability on that. Maybe the AI is, a way to help on that.
So where do you see AI going in 5 years?
Well, I mean, I think we're really just at the beginning. I mean, it's just incredible that we're sitting here 2 years from the launch of OpenAI and ChatGPT, and just how rapidly we've seen the capabilities kind of permutate every aspect of business and so many different areas of life. And we're in like the first inning of that. So where's it going to go? I think you're going to have pretty much every aspect of the business. You're going to be able to use some form of AI to inform what you're doing, save time, improve your messaging, your connection with your clients. I think you're also going to see, by the way, on the flip side, like we're starting a lot with the enterprise right now, but like putting the AI in the hands of consumers to properly consume the data. Like you're just seeing the beginning of that, like, using like ChatGPT as like an alternative for Google when you're doing research. Reddit's starting to do some really interesting stuff with that too, to consume those vast amounts of data, but that's like so early days. And I think it's going to become an incredible consumer tool as well to deal with this like kind of explosion of marketing messaging.
Right. So you work with a lot of B2B chief marketing officers. So what's the secret of getting marketing and sales to play nice?
Well, the most important thing, when I tell anyone in, say, stepping into a CMO role is the first thing you have to do is like really focus in on like, who are our target customers? And it sounds simple, but you'd be shocked at how often a marketing team and a sales team are just not on the same page with like, what are the exact companies that we're selling to? And again, like B2B is different from B2C, and then B2B, you're focused on specific companies. So like just getting crystal clear on that. And by the way, it can change and evolve, but you need to keep that in sync. Just to give you an example, like because in Octane 11 product, we're connecting the dots across all the paid, owned, and earned marketing at the company or the account level, and then mapping that through to the sales activity that's tracked in the CRM, we're seeing all that whole entire journey and the handoffs between marketing and sales. And you'd be shocked at when we start working with customers, how much of a disconnect there can be. We see so many times we start working with a client, and you take a look at the companies that are in a sales process. So they've got sales activity. They're in a pipeline. They've got pipeline against those accounts or sales activity, and they haven't received any marketing at all against those accounts. And that just means that either the marketing team's not reaching them, or they just don't know that those are companies that the sales team's working on, that's more often the case, that they just don't have that sync where this, or maybe the sales team's like decided, wait, we want to go change who we're selling to. We haven't updated the marketing team on that. On the other side of the fence, sometimes you have accounts that the marketing team has reached out to, has educated, and gotten them excited about the product. And then even to the point where maybe they've raised their hand and said, I want to talk to a salesperson. And then the sales team doesn't pick up those leads. And that can happen because, again, like maybe the marketing team is marketing to the kinds of clients or companies that the sales team isn't interested in. That's just a huge disconnect. So like, just getting that part nailed, from a planning perspective, and then tracking that in execution is a huge first step.
So do you see, and I've noticed a lot, so do you see a lot of B2B companies don't know how to portray their company or brand their company online? Like they can do it offline, but online they seem to have a more difficult problem with it?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think companies have gotten good at like taking their brand elements and getting that online in a way that like makes sense in the online environment. Obviously, like the challenge now is that there's so many screens and so many formats. So like, how should our brand live in social media? Or should we be on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or podcasts? These are like new formats that's probably the challenge, I'd say, is taking that kind of core brand and like bringing it out into the different formats.
So how do you separate the useful data from the noise without turning into a spreadsheet zombie?
Well, I mean, it really, in B2B at least, it's really about like, how do you connect the data to the companies that you care about, the target accounts? And anytime you're mapping any of that marketing activity to your target accounts, like, that's going to be a useful signal. A challenge I think that many B2B marketers have, I mean, at B2C marketers too, but in B2B, it's particularly acute, is they've got this signal from marketing activities that is so siloed that it's just hard to connect the dots across everything. And that's one of the reasons why like data ends up being less useful.
So how do you convince the CEO that marketing isn't just pretty slides?
Well, I mean, when you're mapping the data to actual clients, actual revenue, and you can really show the causality of we reached and engaged these customers and they either raise their hand as a direct result of that marketing, or that helped them to move through a sales funnel faster, or have a larger purchase, or remain customers for longer, or use our product more frequently. Those are the kinds of metrics and KPIs and outcomes that CEOs are looking for. But in order to show that, you have to have the data at your fingertips, and you have to have it mapped the proper way. And obviously that's, the mission we're on at Octane 11, but historically it has not been easy.
Yeah, so I want to move into data. It's definitely the backbone of modern marketing. But why does it feel that most companies are stuck trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfold?
Rubik's Cube blindfold, yeah. I mean, that does sound challenging. I think the biggest challenge is particularly when it comes to B2B, is just like the quality of the data it's not mapped to the clients and the accounts that you care about, which means you can't map it to revenue, which is the main business outcome that you're going for. The data lives in silos, so you can't compare apples to apples. Like it's definitely challenging. Like I definitely feel for B2B marketers, and that's how we got into this. I was the chief strategy officer at MediaMath, and we were going through a huge growth spurt. I also became the chief marketing officer, and coming from a data-driven company like MediaMath and then stepping into the CMO role, I was absolutely like shocked and appalled at how difficult and it was to connect the dots across all of our paid, owned, and earned activity, and how poor the quality of data was. But we had a view like, hey, if we could connect all these different marketing touch points to an account and then to the shopping cart, which in B2B is Salesforce, like then you could like paint the full picture and see the whole customer journey and make real decisions. But without that data connection, it's true. Like marketers are, they're spinning their wheels. It's very, very challenging. And that's why for the CMO, like CMOs across the C-suite, they have the lowest tenure of any role in the C-suite, because like they just don't have the data to stand on to have the credibility. Where from a volume perspective, they've got all the data. They're touching every customer. They're touching every prospect across every touch point in every format. Like they have the data, but it just hasn't been connected in a way that makes it useful. And that just undermines their ability to execute, undermines their ability, their credibility around the C-table, and leads to those short tenures.
So how do you break down those silos without office warfare?
I mean, the number one thing is connecting the data to accounts, to companies. Like once you do that, everything else flows like actually beautifully, because now you've got like that entity, all the touches with that entity, what's the content, which campaign was it, and you get to track the actual results for that company. Like, did they become a client? Did they expand their revenue? Were they retained a long time? Like all that stuff. But when the data is not connected to accounts, not connected to a campaign or content, like it's just floating out there, it's just, you can't do much with it. So that right out of the gate is going to, make it much easier to have the hard conversation.
So how do you get teams to actually use the data instead of just nodding at dashboards?
I'll tell you that like one of our most popular views in our platform is starting with, here's all the wins that we've had in the last 30 days. These are all the clients.
It's on your dashboard?
This is one of the visualizations. These are all the wins that our business has had in the last 30 days. And I can click into each one of those and see the entire customer journey, every touch, every engagement, every piece of content. When there was the first sales engagement, first sales meeting, maybe they went to an event or they downloaded a white paper, or they engaged with our chatbot, like every single touch, all the way into they became pipeline and then they turned into revenue. And you get to see that whole journey. That is like the dream for a CMO, certainly for a B2B CMO. And it's not just finding one, like a needle in a haystack. It's all of them. And so we've got clients that's what they come in to, turn on their computer every day. It's the first thing they look at. Show me all the wins and show me the whole customer journey. And as a CMO or head of digital or head of demand gen, like that's what you're there for. And didn't share that with your CEO or your CFO or your CRO or the board. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of like, hey, we got to convince people to use this. Like, this is why you got into marketing in the first place.
So how do you guys use predictive analytics, and why is that just not a fancy way of guessing? Predictive
Analytics is really based on like the quality of your data. So like, for example, like in the DSP world, so I worked at MediaMask, in the DSP world, like there's always concepts of like lift measurement. So we're going to hold back a cohort of clients, and then some will get exposed and some of them won't. And we'll see what happens to the ones that are exposed. It sounds really good, and it is really good for comparing tactics within your one platform. But the reality is, like, ads on the open web are just one slice of all the dozens of tools that a marketer is using. So to be able to compare all of that and draw some kind of like predictive insight, it's really tough unless everything's plugged in there. And so you have some tools like MMM, like Meta has a great tool called Robin. It's open source. You can check it out. Google that, go to their site. It requires you to plug in data from all different kinds of channels and some kind of success, like a shopping cart or something like that. It works reasonably well for B2C, but when you get into B2B, where you've got a buying group, you've got a super long sales cycle, you're not like a click and then buy, like you've got some kind of sales activity tracked in the CRM, like you got to get all that data connected, and then you can plug it into an MM model like Robin or others to get some kind of insight about like what's driving the behavior that you're trying to get to, and the what if analysis, the predictive part of like, okay, well, if I want to get more of this result, what do I need to do more of and make sure I don't do less of? Or if I flipping the question around, like if I spent X more dollars on this particular activity, what should I expect my outcome to be? So that's all related to like getting the data into the right place. The AI is available, like the Robin, Meta Robin, like that's a machine learning model that's just kind of particularly tuned for marketing. So that's there. It's really the data, getting that in place is key.
So what do you think the most exciting trend in data tech is right now, and why does it sound both amazing and terrifying?
Well, I mean, obviously the AI is incredible. And by the way, like we've been talking about machine learning for a very long time. I mean, I think what's new here is the large language models, which kind of like humanizes the AI and makes it like much more understandable to like, the average person. It's not about like just kind of crunching the numbers like under the hood. Like this is like really front and center. And like, obviously that's super exciting as we get in from just purely text-based into imagery, into video, into audio, like that podcast example I was mentioning. Like, that is super exciting, and that's going to really, I would say, free up time for marketers, for like everyone in the enterprise to like, think a little more high level, think a little bit kind of out of the box. There's a lot of that kind of groundwork is going to be done. I think that's really exciting. Like the terrifying part about it, I wouldn't say it's quite terrifying, but it's, we're going to have to reinvent. I mean, there's always, whenever there's something new, it's going to require like rethinking how we've done everything. And we're getting into that point. I mean, we're definitely seeing some dislocation in jobs, in business roles. You've got teams that are wondering like, is this job going to exist? And it may not exist in the way that it was, but like, you're going to have to reinvent.
So now to the part where I get to strand you on a desert island. You have coconuts and spotty Wi-Fi. Who are the 5 people that you would bring?
Well, I mean, I got to bring Bear Grylls.
Yep.
You got to
That's the most common.
It's the most common. We need
answer.
Someone who's going to keep us alive. But I don't know. Maybe my alternative to Bear Grylls, if that one's too common, maybe it's Katniss Everdeen. I'm rereading The Hunger Games. Come on. I'm rereading The Hunger Games because my daughter's reading it.
It took me a second to figure out who you're talking about.
And so that's top of mind for me. I actually just finished it last night. But like, she's a survivor. Someone like that. I think I get 5 people. Huh? So like, I think Leonardo da Vinci is one that thought of. Like, you need someone who's like.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say DiCaprio. I'd be very I thought you were going to say Leonardo DiCaprio. I've been very
No,
disappointed in you.
I would bring him on a big boat if I were going on a big boat. But now Leonardo da Vinci, invention, art, I think would be amazing. Here's one maybe you haven't, no one said to you is Deepak Chopra. You're going to be there for a long time on your own. You need to have some inner peace. So I would think someone like that.
And Gordon Ramsay you mentioned, right?
Well, my version of the Gordon Ramsay would be, I'd probably be more like a sushi chef. There's a great documentary, a guy named Jiro Ono, Dreams of Sushi.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's created the most amazing foods. I'm thinking if you're on an island, you're going to have lots of access to.
You're going to have lots of unique fish.
Unique fish. So we'll get Jiro Ono on there, and maybe I got to say Elon Musk too. I don't know if he would. Is he helping you find a way off the island, or what's the next invention? But he's obviously like a very kind of bold thinker. We'll see if you're on the side if you think it'd be fun to hang out with him or not. But if we're going to need a rocket ship to get off, maybe he's a good guy to help.
So you got one guy to build the shelter. Who is it?
Well, I've got my Bear Grylls Katniss Everdeen vote for that one. I'm looking for just the basic shelter.
So Elon Musk showed up, as you mentioned. Do you ask him to build a boat, or would you send him off with the first draft?
I'm going to ask him to build a boat. I think we're going to need some more inventions until we, really either we're going to get off this island or we're going to make this island supercharge it. So we might ask Elon to stick around.
Like Desert Island X by the time he's done.
Yeah, if that's what it takes. But
what's the one piece of tech that you would bring? And no, you can't say satellite phone.
Probably my iPad.
Right.
You have
movies downloaded on it.
I got movies. I got books. I've got my Kindle on there with my Kindle store. So you pretty much have endless content, whether you're reading or watching, and a big screen. I'd say like iPhone, but come on, you got to get the big screen.
So would you do a barter system, or you think you go island crypto?
We go island crypto. I think we need some stored value. If we're gonna think big, and we're gonna trade, and we're gonna have extended time frames, not like on the spot barter.
What do you think you'd learn from the island that would help you in day-to-day business?
Probably patience. We're in a world where we are just hyper connected. Anywhere you turn, you've got a million messages, a million paths that you can run down. Sometimes you just, on an island, I imagine you're not going to have that. So you got to be patient. You got to have time to think. And I think that's something that is actually quite important, for, operating in the 21st century, or, operating a business, or, working in B2B marketing. Like you got to think before you act.
So when the Wi-Fi's down and the Slack notifications are silent, who are you really? And honest, do you binge bad TV?
I binge TV. I think it's pretty good though. I've had some good TV. I'm watching Peaky Blinders right now. I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I started, what's it called? Crud. It's a show on Apple that someone asked me to start writing. Aaron Lebzow told me I should start watching it. Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, yeah. It's a good one.
It was really good. She said it was good, and I tried it, and we watched all 3 seasons. There's a new one coming out, I hear.
Yeah, I know. I'll definitely check that one out. I think that was a great one. What else was great? I think I just read The Crown. I watched The Crown. I just finished the final season of The Crown. Epic. Incredible. I love it. The history, like the way they really get into the details of the relationships. Like, it's amazing. I recommend that one too if you haven't seen it. That'll keep you occupied for a little while too.
So what's the weirdest job you've ever had, and how did it prepare you for the chaos of marketing?
Well, one of the first jobs I ever had, let me think about it. One of my first jobs was I was living in Beijing. I actually moved to Beijing right out of college, and I worked at a private equity firm, and it was pretty early days. There wasn't a lot of private equity happening there, and there weren't that many expats there in the kind of role that I was doing. And I think, I was compiling spreadsheets, coming over email once a month from factories all flung across China, and trying to figure out how to connect the dots across that data and, make sense of it for business reports. I also spent a fair amount of time wrestling with the copying machine. That was pretty old school, but hey, I learned how to figure stuff out on my own, how to communicate, build relationships with people in far-flung places across cultures and across languages. It was a great experience right out of college.
So if you could have dinner with one historical person, who would it be? And would you insist they split the check?
I'd probably say Albert Einstein. I mean,
Why?
not to be too cliche, but like,
It's
he's just
really
incredible. I mean, he's smart, but he's just an incredible thinker. I mean, some of the discoveries that he had were just thought experiments. Like, what if I were sitting on a beam of light traveling across the universe and I looked at my watch, like, what time would it be? Or, those kinds of thought experiments, which is actually pretty relevant for us, even if you're not thinking about intergalactic space travel, like, you're just thinking about your day to day, like, how do I achieve whatever goal that I'm working on in my life or my business? Like, taking the time to like stop and think and do a thought exercise would be, is really helpful. I'd love to talk with him about some of the other thought experiments he's done and how he got to that. But obviously, like, he's an incredible historical figure who lived through so much, and it'd be, so interesting to talk with him about it. Would I pick up the check? I'd pick up the check.
Do you have a surprising hobby that no one would guess?
Maybe that I'm like really like obsessed with learning foreign languages. So I mentioned that I lived in China and I speak Chinese, but before that, I learned German, I learned Japanese and lived in Japan. I learned Spanish, lived in Spain. Anywhere I go. Once I did a trip to Nepal, and I spent like the month before I went learning Nepali so that I could speak to the people when I was there. So I always find I find languages fascinating. I think you learn a lot about a culture, but also when you can talk with people directly without a translation or kind of having that barrier of some kind of translation, like, it really opens up the relationship. So I love that.
Who's your personal Yoda, and what's the best piece of advice they ever gave you?
It's probably my dad. He's an entrepreneur. He's a lawyer, and he's just like a very cool customer. And, nothing seems to rattle him. He's in his 80s, and he still has incredible energy and patience and the ability to get down into the details on anything. Probably the best advice is just about being balanced and just trying to maintain balance. Like, you don't get too excited about the highs, you don't get too upset about the lows, but like, even keel, like, you'll figure it out.
So when you look back in your career, what's the one thing you want people to remember about you besides your excellent desert island strategy?
For me, like, I really just try to elevate everyone around me. Like, we've built an incredible team at Octane 11. It's early days, but recognizing that everyone that we work with is on their own mission, and everyone who's working at our clients and our partners, like, we're all on our own mission, on our own trajectories. And I think, part of the job is to help people get where they want to go. Try to elevate them, and so that's something that I try to do. And that people think about me someday and remember me. Like, I'd love for them to think about, okay, here's a guy who not only built a great company that in its own right helped B2B marketers to do the things that they really wanted to do, and help CMOs like really be impactful around the C-level table, but the whole team around and partners and clients, like, as individuals, help them.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the ADOTAT Show, where we learned that B2B marketing can be more than just jargon and spreadsheets. Thanks to Dan Rosenberg from Octane 11, who somehow made analytics sound almost fun. Almost. Big shout out to our sponsors, Troutman Ammon, the legal eagles who make sure you're not accidentally getting sued by your AI chatbot. Rebrand, the wizards of reinvention who prove that sometimes all you need is a new look to feel brand new. And Incremental, the masters of making small changes that add up to big wins. Without you, we'd just be talking to ourselves. And that's only fun for so long. And hey, if you're still chasing that elusive incremental growth, remember, it's not a myth, but it is kind of like Bigfoot. Everyone claims to see it, but nobody really knows how it got there. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday.